and ambition, I always say, who, aside from your parents, because right away I say my dad, my mom, I was blessed to have. Honestly, this might sound crazy, but I feel like everybody mentors me. I get into an Uber and I start having conversation, and we talk to the students about this all the time. Just start talking to people. And so I feel that it's not a person that's mentored me, it's many people, and it's conversations that have mentored me.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of F5 Collective Presents Women in Business. Today, I'm so excited that we have with us Nancy Gale of JAMAH, an incredible leather goods line, absolutely gorgeous stuff. Oh my God, it's so wonderful. But not only that, it's made in America, which is fantastic, and there is an incredible story with how Nancy is really supporting entrepreneurs and young up-and-comers and those who don't really get a chance to discover their entrepreneurial spirit, if not for having some support. And that's something that Nancy does. So we're going to talk about all of that and get into it. And Nancy, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you. And thank you for pronouncing JAMAH correctly.
You're very welcome. And I want to get even to where the name came from. But first of all, so tell us a little bit about yourself, your background.
Oh, goodness. So I moved to Detroit at 7 years old, and so my formative years were spent there from 7 to 17. I have a very interesting childhood because it was very idyllic and happy and beautiful, and then riddled with some great adversity, which I think really strengthened my resolve personally and professionally. So that's just sort of in a nutshell.
And then, so, you know, I looked a little bit, and what I find so interesting is because you were raised in Detroit, which is very much the heart of Made in America.
Oh, yeah.
What about your childhood there really drew you to, when you were starting JAMAH and all of that, to decide, whatever I'm going to do, I want to make sure that it is actually made in the USA?
You know, when I was younger, and everything was made here at the time, and we had so much pride in that. And I'm of the age where we saw manufacturing move out of the U.S. And that was fascinating to me because we have the Motor City, we have beautiful architecture, we have so much intelligence and talent here, and somehow fashion, luxury fashion, was all relegated to Europe, as though if you are not there, you don't have that ability. And so that made absolutely no sense to me. And so that was really the driving force, was why is everything that is made in Europe better than what we can do? And where is everything really made? So that was the driving force.
So then, you know, I love that you bring up luxury. And what led you into these amazing bags and this incredible leather experience? But what got you involved in leather goods and really wanting to do that?
So handbags are so interesting to me because really, what does a bag do? With all due respect, it carries your shit. You throw your stuff in a bag. And then I started, really understanding the levels, the lengths that people would go to own a bag of a certain stature. And why that mattered. And what I started realizing is when you have this beautiful work of art, when you pick it up, you hold yourself differently, even as you're reaching for it, because it's something really special. And so that's what luxury looked like to me, was something that really sort of changes or at least brings out your confidence. That you start to feel a very special connection with. And then the great thing, too, about a bag, right, is you can carry it with so many different outfits. You can wear jeans and a T-shirt, and then you grab that perfect bag, and it just brings a certain sass to you. So that was really the connection to your heart and your confidence is what really drove me. And help me follow my definition of luxury. And there's the there are the basic facts. It must be of great craftsmanship.
Yeah.
There must be individuality. There must be, for me, what's really important is love at our in our studio.
Yeah.
And so I sort of put my own definition on it, understanding the baseline, and just drove forward. And then being able to do it in my own backyard, that just means everything.
So what sparked JAMAH, and where did the name come from?
Oh, gosh. We have a great story on the name, but at this point we've found about 7 or 8 meanings. And it's funny, my friends at the time when I was coming up with the name, I drove everybody crazy. I was reading book after book. I found the origin of words. And I came upon JAMAH, and it just really, really resonated with me. And there are meanings, like there's a park in Africa called JAMAH Park, and it represents freedom. In Arabic, it's pearl and diamond.
Oh, wow.
In Persian, it represents together. In Swahili, it represents to be. And then I realized it means whatever anyone needs it to mean, and that's when I decided the company's motto would be who you are.
Yeah, yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That is. Were you always interested in fashion as a kid? Was that something that always drew you, or?
Very interested as a kid, and then I moved away from it.
Okay.
I graduated college, and I wanted people to take me more seriously. And being the sort of happy, bubbly, well, then I wasn't blonde, but I may as well have been, I decided people really aren't taking me seriously. And being in the fashion industry, I felt like added to that. So I became a technical writer. I'm a very strong writer. I love writing. So I started working for companies like Ernst & Young and Bank of America, and everything I was not. And at the time, that was one of the sort of crosses to bear. I was very concerned about what people thought.
Yeah.
And one day I realized this is not me. I need to go after my dreams.
Yeah. What was that like, leaving a kind of stable corporate or whatever, and then jumping off and saying, okay, I'm going to start my own business. I'm going to do this?
It felt so right, so quickly. And I knew, it was scary, of course. And my dreams were so big. I'm going to create what I knew would be the first legacy made in the USA ultra luxury brand. And when I started JAMAH, I had a business partner, and we worked in the entertainment industry quite a bit, doing cast and crew gifts. And that's what sort of brought me back into the fashion world. And then we quickly separated, and I started realizing my dreams with JAMAH. And I thought, I want to be the first made in the USA ultra luxury handbag brand. And I wasn't afraid, because sort of back to what I was saying earlier, I grew up with so much positivity around me, but I also experienced in my life, my mom spent the better part of 4 years when I was a teenager in the hospital, in a coma for a long time.
Oh, wow.
When I was 25, I was raped. And a little over 10 years ago, my mother was murdered in a home invasion.
Oh, my gosh.
But through all of that, what I realized, and this is what really helped me run my business, is we can actually be two things at once. And our challenges do not dictate our constitution. So life kept telling me that. So when I hit a challenge, and in this case the challenge was everybody and their sister telling me, you can't do this, that's crazy. Nobody will ever care about made in the USA luxury. There will never be another big fashion house. And that was ludicrous to me, but it was just one more challenge that I was going to overcome. Yeah. Just like and life taught me that no matter what I've been through, you get to keep going. You get to make that choice every day. And I think this is one of my best secrets, I knew and didn't care that it was going to take me at least 25 years before people really understood who I was. Because we look back at the greats, at the Coco Chanel and Louis and some of these and whether someone likes them or not, it's amazing what those brands did.
Yeah.
But one day there was one person behind them. Coco Chanel, 1914, it was 1940 by the time people really understood who she was and what the brand was. but we've not seen any of that. So I think we're very misled about the time it takes to perfect something.
Yeah.
And we're living in this fast world now, but even in this fast world, behind the scenes, it's not so fast.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that myth of overnight, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's sustainable, it's not sustainable. And yeah.
It's interesting to that point. I was actually doing a podcast a few years ago, and when I launched, which we can talk about, my Motorcar collection, my brand was like that. That was the turning point for the brand. And at that point, I had been in business 23 years. And someone said to me, do people now, because of the Motorcar collection, do they think you're an overnight success? And I said, I get that question all the time. He said, how do you respond? I said, honestly, I just tell them that 23 years of ramen is a lot of fucking sodium. To which he responded by saying, it's a salty path. So we now have a LinkedIn newsletter called 23 Years of Ramen, The Salty Journey of an Entrepreneur. And it's tidbits from me, and then now I'm starting to bring some guests on. And those things that we all wish we knew then.
Yeah.
And everyone has the opportunity to share their story around that.
That's so great.
and it's great. We have this modern, our logo now, or our packaging is this really cool modern art ramen package.
Oh, how
sometimes
great.
I'm in the noodles. And yep.
It makes me think I remember, this is so perfect. I just remember as a kid, I would say to my dad, because I loved the packaged ramen, and we weren't really allowed to have a lot of that kind of stuff in our house. But I remember I said to my dad, Dad, someday I want to eat this every day. He said, you know what, baby, someday you're going to have to eat this every day. And I guarantee you're going to be sorry you ever said it. And I remember when I realized one day, it's like, oh my God, I wish he wasn't right. I wish he wasn't right. But
yeah. And then one day you advance to being able to put an egg in it.
I know, you think you're the best. You think oh my gosh, look, I've added protein. At least there's protein to it. Oh my gosh, it's so good. Okay, so now this so this is so wild. As I was walking into, we had a lovely conversation a little bit earlier about the value of luxury and the perception of it. And as I was walking in, after having picked up a little treats and stuff, there was a lady walking in front of me that was wearing a sweater, kind of like a duster sweater, that had Chanel written all over it in giant letters, making sure that I knew it was Chanel, in case I didn't know. And I thought to myself, wow, okay, this is interesting, because I'm about to meet with somebody who creates these really elegant displays of luxury that are just truly among high quality, really beautiful, and that's how you know how beautiful they are. So as you have done this with your brand and really established this look and feel, and we will talk about the Motorcar collection in a bit, you have a unique experience when you go online to even buy your leather goods. You can choose and then have it personal. I mean, all these different things. So what led you to realize that my type of luxury is truly about creating this personal connection, because also the names of your bags are something. So what led to that?
So the vision I had was, we'll call it personalization on steroids, because that's when you meet people who have any kind of luxury item, right? Whether it's a watch, whether it's a bag, and then you ask the story behind it, right? Like, that's the emotional connection. And I realized I want a brand where every time you pick anything up that's JAMAH, you feel that connection. And so, for a long time, right, in a nutshell, luxury equals logo. And I thought, I'm not going to be mad at that. I'm just going to bring something different in. I'm going to have a personal, very honest relationship with my clients. I'm going to give people a little bit of autonomy, but not so much that, like when I do bespoke work, it still has to represent the JAMAH brand. But what does real personalization mean? And the first thing I thought of was, what if you could write a letter to someone if you gifted the bag. So, and funny enough, right, people say, oh, personalization, yeah, you can get your initials. I wanted to go a whole different level. So we invite our clients to they can write something for themselves, or if they're gifting it, and we actually inscribe that inside the bag. So in fact, recently I had a client, it was really neat. He bought his wife 2 bags, and one was Mother's Day and one was her birthday, and they were a couple weeks apart. And the first bag was for Mother's Day, and it came out and it said, Amanda, to the greatest mother, ... And then the next 2 weeks later, and she didn't know what that meant. And a couple weeks later for her birthday, he gave her the other one, and it said ... and an even better wife, loves Iris.
Wow.
And so eventually her grandkids, her grandkids. In fact, I have a client, she reads a story to her grandkids called Redbirds. And so we found the Redbirds logo, and every bag she buys is a red patch with the black outline of the bird in every bag. So you can't get that anywhere else. Yeah. And then we also film the making of your bag.
Wow.
Yeah, and then we have a little surprise that comes in everybody's bag, which we're actually implementing now, and I can't say what it is, but it's really special.
Oh my gosh!
And so, to me, like, that's real luxury, like storytelling. And so even, when I was learning about the fashion world, and one thing I always knew was many brands name all of their products. So as a consumer, I can go into Chanel and say that's the Linda bag.
Yeah.
But who's Linda? Yeah. What does that mean? Is that actually someone you know? Is it a laundry list of names? And again, I don't want to disparage any of the other brands and the way they do what they do. And also, I'm in a unique situation because I'm an ultra luxury designer among. If you look at all the greats, right, no one's alive.
Yeah.
And so now I have a brand that's over a quarter century old, and I'm alive and kicking. So I get to really implement all of this. So then I thought, well, what if we video the making of your bag and you see your nameplate? And then what if the bag isn't just the Linda, it's my telling the story about why Linda inspires me and what she means in my life.
Yeah.
And so that became really special for me. So, and it's fun because I'll go through our orders sometimes. I mean, I do bespoke work, but when we get orders on the website, and without missing a beat, I'll share with, one of my best friends, Rosie, I will say, I sold you today. Someone bought you today. and that, it just, so I feel like I've been able to bring in my childhood, my dreams, my best friends, the people that inspire me, all into my business every day.
Wow. Now, what had ended up, because there is such a beautiful personalization and an understanding of, I don't know, what gets people excited or certainly feeling good about what they're about to experience with your products. What then led to you deciding to do your Motorcar collection? And what is that exactly? I looked at it. It's very cool. So if you can speak to that a bit.
So I was at an event, a car event one day for, there's a company called Gunther Works, and they remaster Porsches. And I met Peter, who founded Gunther Works, and he said, you need to make a bag that would fit a certain component in the car. And we did, and it was for a Porsche 900, and I got the Pepita from Porsche, and I trimmed the bag out with that, and it was really cool. And I thought, this is really great, but it's not this, I don't know what it is, and I love the car culture. I mean, I grew up in the D. My dad and I would do donuts every Sunday morning in the winter. We would go out for donuts, and we'd come home. We're smart enough to pick donuts out, but what we actually did were donuts. But the funny part is, I got rid of my car 12 years ago. I Uber everywhere. but I'm a demon on the racetrack. I love to race. And so I actually ended up at the thermal racetrack meeting this gentleman who was telling me the story that his wife is his biggest fan. He's a big car guy. He has a big collection. He races all the time. But it's not her world that way. Mm-hmm. So I said, wouldn't it be fun to find a way to bring her into that world subtly?
Yeah.
So he has this beautiful 1965 Alfa Romeo. It's all red, but there's one marking, a yellow marking over the driver's side front wheel well. It's this yellow, really cool shape. So he said, okay. I said, let me do a bag that reflects the car. So because Alfa's logo is the serpent, and the car was red, I said the bag has to be red snake. And one side, similar to that shape, is yellow. Then he wrote her a beautiful message. Then we filmed the making of the bag. I was actually able to be there when he handed her the bag. Oh, wow. And then I realized that's the space. I want to work with the individuals or with the brands if they want to connect me with the clients. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because you can go to Porsche, buy your Porsche, go into the shop, buy a Porsche bag. These are more like if you know, you know. And they're meant to be, if they're for women, just a beautiful handbag. Mm. I did recently for a Bentley a really beautiful Himalayan crocodile tote. But if you open it, the top 4 inches of facing mimic the quilting on the door.
Oh, wow.
So, and then someone else might say, no, I want it to yell Bentley, whatever that is. I'm working on a one-of-one, bags for a one-of-one Ferrari right now. A group of 20 people got together to buy their friend who's getting this bag, because he's sort of the man who has everything and very lovely and generous. And they said, how do we gift him? So I'm working on that, a bag right now to reflect his new one-of-one Ferrari.
Wow.
And I did a wine caddy for someone's McLaren. She wanted to surprise her husband, so it reflects, and that's always the word I use. It reflects the interior of his McLaren. That ended up getting sent to McLaren, or a photo of it. So that's how those opportunities are now opening up with the brands. But the bespoke work and getting to know the clients is so much fun. And then, interestingly, and we can talk about my nonprofit, now a number of my Motorcar clients are starting to mentor my ambition students.
Okay, this is very cool. So yes, let's talk about that, because what you're doing by providing these wonderful opportunities for growth and learning for folks that probably wouldn't have the opportunity unless you had to open that door. What led to Ambition, your nonprofit?
My dinner table.
Yeah.
I grew up at what I always call the ideal dinner table. And as I grew my company into the working in these worlds of wealth and seeing a lot of people that were self-made, I just started thinking, what happens if you didn't grow up at my dinner table? And that's not financial. It's about access and exposure.
Yeah.
The way my dad thought, even before he had a level of success, was if I came home one day and said, I think I want to be a brain surgeon, I guarantee you within the next 2 to 3 months, we'd have a friend over and it would turn out he's a brain surgeon.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's what I kept thinking was, how do we do that? And so that was definitely the origin, the inspiration for Ambition.
So is Ambition something that supports, and I'm assuming that it does more than just support folks in their quest to be part of the fashion industry, but truly...
Oh, in fact, it has nothing to do with the fashion
industry. I was going to say,
It's really, we work with juniors and seniors and sophomores, juniors, and seniors in high school. We're actually transitioning now to partnership with the Boys and Girls Club.
Oh, wow.
We've been an in-school program for a long time, but we've realized we can do what we do so well in these club partnerships. So it's really about getting these kids to feel comfortable in arenas that they don't feel they belong.
Yeah.
And the biggest focus, we focus everything around marketing, because that's the one thing that I know. It doesn't matter what field anyone goes into, they will not suffer at the hands of learning marketing.
Yeah.
And so, but it's been interesting because one of the things that I discovered immediately, but it really resonated within a few years of the program, we're 16 years old now, was if you don't know these kids, you cannot serve these kids. And so I reset the program, and and we're with the kids once a week. And our mentors must commit to at least once a month, because consistency is everything.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we started a program called You Don't Know About Me. So all we do in the fall is get to know the kids, and the kids get to know the mentors. And at the end of the semester, everybody, including the mentors, does their official You Don't Know About Me. So they've worked all semester, and what that means is they get on camera, and with power, not pity, and that's the absolute key, that's the foundation of our program. With power, not pity, they announce their greatest challenge, then they share how they got through or are getting through it, and that makes them leaders.
Yeah.
And then they wrap it up with a humble flex to show that you can hold two truths at all times.
Wow. My God. So you've been doing this for 16 years.
Yeah.
And about how many kids have you had go through
We
it
work
now?
in pods of 30 to 40 kids.
Okay.
And we're actually, the great thing about Boys and Girls Club is allowing us to expand.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So as you've been doing this and also having this for-profit business, how do you kind of straddle that?
I say that the success of JAMAH allows me the bandwidth to run ambition. And if you work for JAMAH, you somehow, some way, and it's different for everyone, volunteer for ambition. That's the connection.
Right.
We don't do now every so often, in fact, on the month of my mom's birthday, we'll say anyone who buys a Helen will make a donation to ambition. But, when I started thinking about ambition, it was at a time that there was this whole kind of cause and commerce, cause marketing was the thing. And what it felt like for me, and I'm sure there were many places that it was beautifully orchestrated, but what it felt like for me was find a cause, any cause, act like you care.
Yeah.
And I thought, I don't want to do that. I want them separate but intrinsically connected. So I thought, how do I do that? And it was through having my JAMAH team get involved with ambition.
Wow. Yeah.
And so, and it allows, though, my students to come in and understand how I'm doing business. But what we've also done is, because after we get to know the kids, now we can really help guide them. So when we move into the marketing campaign, in fact, we do so much around marketing that the first order of business in January is, who is someone that you feel like is so in another universe that you'd like to meet. And so the very first year we did that, they gave me names, and we said, okay, so now we have to study that person. And after we study them, we'll make a script, and then we'll film that, and then we'll send this thing around, and maybe that person will come to class, and you can't say, we think you're so great, we want you to come to class.
Yeah.
You have to compel that person. You have to make them feel that they're missing out if they don't come.
Wow.
So, it's such a great story with you and me, because the first person was Richard Branson.
Oh my
that's
God!
How I met
that's
Sam.
how you met Sam.
Yes, so
That is cool.
Yes. And it was so funny because the kids are there and it's Richard and we actually met them at the Sunset Marquee and they let us film. But I just became obsessed with Sam.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Oh,
So
wow.
that was so beautiful, and it really ignited that program for us.
Right.
And so that's how we start the year, or the semester, and then we move on to the kids marketing our merchandise line, which is all You Don't Know About Me, Empower Not Pity, and Ambition merchandise. And now we have an anthem, and we're about to launch a big dance challenge, and so that way the kids, we could have a kid that says, I don't think marketing is really my thing. I'm interested in accounting. They'll work with our accountant with our merchandise. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's it's funny you should say it regarding marketing itself, because it's true. It's storytelling, right?
Yes.
And to be able to say, okay, you can't just say, "You're really cool. We really want you."
Yeah.
But to show that you've taken the time to know them a little bit.
Yes.
Which reflects what you were talking about. So who would you say is somebody that maybe mentored you, or the value that you have found being mentored yourself? Because when we do these kinds of things, it's like, what have I discovered about myself in this?
I would say, there's the obvious, right? In fact, in Ambition, I always say, who, aside from your parents, because right away I say my dad, my mom, I was blessed to have. Honestly, this might sound crazy, but I feel like everybody mentors me. I get into an Uber and I start having conversation, and we talk to the students about this all the time. Just start talking to people. And so I feel that it's not a person that's mentored me, it's many people, and it's conversations that have mentored me.
Yeah. No, that's great, because also your personal touch speaks to that a lot. Because I can hear that even what has kicked off even certain kind of levels in your brand, like the Motorcar. And so as you have been on this journey with JAMAH and establishing luxury, this USA made luxury, what have you, I guess, discovered as you've navigated luxury in America and seen maybe how luxury has shifted or changed, because you have been doing this for a good amount of time, and I know that it has shifted a bit.
Yeah, I think sort of going back to what we were talking about earlier, it shifted to, I think, it's easy to say the personal connection, but sort of the personal involvement, right? And again, with my setting parameters, but a client can say, I'd like that bag with gold hardware instead of nickel hardware.
Yeah.
Or, I love that bag, but can you add a pocket for my computer? So I think there's nothing more luxury than that, right? That you can, and the bags are not cheap, and we make everything made to order. So I get no breaks anywhere, not on my materials, not on my labor, and I want my labor. They're my family. I want them to put food on their table, and not feel like they're having to scrape. And so, I think people understanding all those layers, that's also feels like luxury, because luxury, right, and special things it's when we feel in on something, right? Like we're sort of got the secret, because what we're discovering now, right, it's all over TikTok, the videos of where things are really being made. And I always say, it's so interesting. People say, oh my God, I can't believe we discovered whatever brand is made in China. I don't know where we have this idea, and it's probably the same place as it was in the U.S., that someone in China can't sew. There's major talent everywhere. The issue is, people just want you to be honest.
Just tell us.
Tell us. If you tell me, I'm surprised no one has filmed an artisan in China making a bag.
Okay, so this is interesting that you bring that up. My older son is very fascinated with Asia, and I've had the opportunity to spend time in the continent in a variety of countries. It's amazing. And he looks for that. He goes online and he goes on YouTube and he seeks out those kinds of things where you see somebody doing a bag from China or from Korea or wherever, creating artisans, and it's so interesting that that's not more prevalent to recognize that. Well, what has been exciting for you with your artisans, and how do you work with your folks?
So I have a lead sewer. We really are like family. And it's interesting, when we started working together years and years ago, he had done more mainstream. And everything they'd give to me, I'd say, this is great. and then I'd point out 10 things we needed to change. And very graciously. But unfortunately, no matter how gracious I was, no one likes to, that was hard. What came across to them at the end of that, like week after week, was, doesn't seem like anything we do is good enough. And I said, I'm looking at each product the way I know our clients will. And I say, if we get these, if I give you these 10 instructions or this feedback, redo it. Let's redo it and redo it. And eventually you won't have to redo it. This will be the way that we do. So all of a sudden, so we do that for a few months. And all of a sudden, one day, I see there's a shift, and now he is so excited to show me everything. And in fact, sometimes it's so funny. Now I've watched his whole process, and I'll give him something, and years ago, the first answer might have been, "No, we can't do that." And I video him sometimes watching him think. And then he goes into these little circles and marches and looks up in the air. I don't know who he's talking to. And so it's been such a great learning experience because he's just by nature an incredible craftsman. Wow. But watching him go up to this level has been really, really beautiful. Yeah. So I say you hear what your clients have to say. You can't do everything every client says, right? Because 90 other clients might want it differently. Yeah. I've learned to take in information, but let time tell us what's more weighted.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was going to ask you, how did you come to this incredible ability to not just offer this luxury brand, but to have it be so personal? Mm-hmm. Was there a moment that you realized, it doesn't just differentiate me, but it speaks to me on a deeper level?
I had a showroom in New York at one point, and the head of the showroom said to me one day, "Why are you putting suede interiors in your bags? Get some silks, it's less expensive." I said, "I don't want to do that." And that began the conversations of there will never be another. Yeah. And I realized I'm going to do this forever. Mm. And, when people say, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life, I call total bullshit. I think if you love what you do, it will drive you to become successful. Yeah. And it will sustain you at 2 a.m. when you're figuring out how to pay the bills and how to get that order in on time. Yeah. And so I think as I realize, this is my life's work, it really has to be my life. And it's not a matter of, because I have such great vision and ideas. It's, I love this. It speaks to me. I want to speak to it. And if I'm going to sustain and really make my mark and build something, then it has to be who I am. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. You're putting yourself out there. And it goes back to your why, right? So your why is, if this is something you're going to pursue, how much are you willing to commit to truly pursuing what matters to you about it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then once you do that and build that base, then it's much easier, at least my experience, to bring in other people's input. Mm-hmm. It's hard when you don't have a base and everyone's telling you what to do. In fact, when I was building and everyone was telling me what to do, that's a tricky spot for everybody, because all I heard were the naysayers. And in fact, and I think about this all the time now, I wish I just hadn't given weight to them. I wish I listened to them just to hear the words, because sometimes a little nugget comes. Mm-hmm. But the energy that turns into time that one can put into listening to all of that is really detrimental. Yeah. Because what I realized is people are telling me the limits based on their own limitations. Yeah. Mine are different, and one's not right or wrong or better or worse. Yeah. But I had to really craft not just the vision, but I had to really, really absorb what it was going to take to get there. Yeah. And I had to figure out, how do I navigate all the input? And I learned eventually the best way to navigate the input is to just say, okay, I don't need to be mad at you that you don't think I can do this.
Yeah.
Because you really don't think you can do this. And that's okay.
Yeah. It's your path to walk.
Yeah. Yeah.
And finding that strength as you're walking that path to actually be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So as you are, because you are in a service industry, this is what you do.
Yeah.
As you are serving others, what do you do for yourself?
Oh, I feel like I'm just really good at garnering like the gold in every moment. And I've learned, I mean, I've done some great, amazing things. I've traveled, I've jumped out of airplanes, I've like run races, I've skied like crazy. I think what's the best husband that's ever been placed in this universe. So every moment with him is just heaven. But honestly, in every single moment, I just try to find the excitement in that moment, because then it doesn't matter what you're doing. Then if I'm on a work bender, I'm still enjoying every moment. And not just because I love my work, but because I love that peace and joy all wrapped up into one.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what have been some of the challenges that you've discovered as you've gone into the fashion industry, which I know is not the easiest industry on the planet, and especially when you're looking at luxury and dealing with European brands and so forth. What have been some of the challenges, and how have you overcome those?
So I think one of the things I did a long time ago, and it's funny because I think it speaks to real luxury, is I was part of a showroom. I was doing the shows. I was running out of money. I was, and I realized I don't want to live in the fashion industry. I want to stay on the peripheral of it. Maybe I was chicken. I don't know. And then, of course, as I really, really became committed to creating this ultra luxury name, that's when my mom was killed. So going through that and getting her case went cold, and we had to get it pulled out of cold case and then go to trial. And I think what I do to overcome the challenges is just remember, like, you have a choice every single day. And some days it's easy, and some days it's harder to navigate those challenges. Yeah. So I don't have a lot of specifics I can give you as to what were those challenges, but I think every day throws challenges at us. Yeah. So my commitment was more to figure out just what's my formula to get beyond things. And so I have a million anecdotes. Yeah. Now. Like even that, like when people would tell me it couldn't be done, I was so compelled to explain why it could and why it's okay that I felt like I had to answer to everybody. Yeah. So that was a big challenge, actually, because that also takes you don't realize how much mental energy that takes. And you'll never convince anybody. No. And so I'd say that's been one of the best learning experiences I've had. And also the biggest challenge, I think, is learning a lesson and holding on to it. Yeah. Like, we're very quick to say we learn from our mistakes. But once you've made the same mistake 94 times... Yeah. Did you really learn? Yeah. Because did you mean you learn from 100 mistakes? I don't know. Yeah. So that's been a big challenge, is to, like, pull out those anecdotes and that sort of, library of the ways of overcoming challenges. Yeah. So I think... one of the things that's really helpful for me is every day, throughout the day, just sort of resetting and remembering, like, whether it's we've run out of leather, or we had an issue with the machine, or we're having financial challenges, whatever it is. I have a little exercise I do called stops. I do it 5-6 times a day. Started when I was a little girl with my dad. It was a game, and so we'd be in the middle of something, and he'd say, stops. And it stands for settle down, take a breath, own it, poof. Because I love the word poof, because I was 7 or 8 when we started this. And the last S is and smile, because for the moment you smile, you cannot be sad. It doesn't work. And nobody doesn't have a minute 4 or 5 times a day to do that. So I still do it. And that's just my reset. So I reset not only when I need a reset. And I think that's really helpful too.
Yeah.
And, and it's great, right? You can meditate and go to yoga, and you can go to all these productized things to fix yourself, right? Where you have to pay. And that's great. Everyone has to figure out what works for them. But I think no matter what you're doing, to spend a few minutes a day where it doesn't cost time or money or anguish, to just take a sec to reset, not only when you need it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's helped me frame my mind so that I can deal with my challenges.
Yeah. No, that's great. I used to tell people when I worked in certain things that I'd say, maybe put just, even if it's 10 minutes on your calendar for every day.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
that's yours.
Yeah.
Because everybody needs to breathe. You got to take a minute.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Just for you. And if you can get in front of it, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you can get in front of it, as opposed to, it's kind of like when you need to hydrate and you wait until you're absolutely so thirsty you can't stand it.
Yeah.
Your body's saying, okay, I'm at the point that if you don't give me something, I'm just get in front of it.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't find
Yeah.
yourself like that.
Yeah.
No, that's excellent.
And I think, too, it's really important to remember, and especially when you're running a business, we're very busy complicating, and we spend very little time. In fact, I think it's often looked down on to simplify, as if someone doesn't understand the complexity of something. But I believe life throws many great challenges at us that we really don't need to then complicate the simple in our own lives.
Yeah, no, that's great.
I always tell my students, if you can show me, if you take a situation where you're highly stressed, if you can actually show me how the angst and anger and fear helps solve the problem, I will out-anger, out-angst, and out-fear every single one of you. But no one's been able to show that actually works, right? Because then it would make sense.
Yeah, yeah. If they're able to do that and that happens, please film it.
Yes, exactly.
Now, what's next for JAMAH?
So I actually am iterating right now. So with the Motorcar collection, because it's about a reflection of your car, I just started something new where, and it can be a full shot of your car or a blown up section of your car, where we actually have an artist who hand paints your car on your bag. So that's literally coming out as we speak.
Oh my gosh.
And I called a client of mine. She has a Bentley bag that I made. And I said, would you carry one of these? And I sent her a mock-up. And she said, I carry a bag with my freaking dog's painted on it. Yes, I would definitely carry this.
That's so great.
Yeah, so that's exciting.
That's very cool.
Yeah,
That's very cool.
And then growing ambition and getting this big dance challenge going. And really, we're working on getting you can actually register a holiday. So we're in the process now of registering National Power Not Pity Day.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
Because that's something, right, like that's such a simple life approach. And we see, it's interesting with our students, when they do their You Don't Know About Me's, the reason they've all gotten so comfortable bearing their souls is because it used to go like this. And I do my You Don't Know About Me the first day of class every year, and I tell them about my mom. And one of my students one day, she saw that, and her dad had been shot and killed by the police. And obviously there's so many layers to the story. But for her, as a teenager, that's what she's left with. And she said her identity with that was, my dad was shot and killed. After her You Don't Know About Me, her identity was, my dad was shot and killed. But she's still a full, amazing human being. Yeah. So we started seeing, right, that's where language really matters in your empowerment. And I remember, it's interesting, after my mom and after my dad passed, although he passed exactly the way, if one could write their script, I think it would be. But I had some people that would come up to me and say, how you doing? And other people that would come up to me and say, how you doing? And that resonated with me.
Yeah.
And so we've seen that with the kids. When suddenly you change your voice, you're not a victim anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's our focus is this Power Not Pity Day and our big national dance challenge.
Okay, what's the National Dance Challenge? What is it?
So we have a new anthem, and it really encompasses ambition, you don't know about me, and power not pity.
Mm-hmm.
And we are just setting it up right now. We have someone creating a signature move, and we have we're looking for entrants all over the country, from 8 to 80, like senior citizen homes, disadvantaged areas, wealthy areas. There's absolutely no limits, and we want people to make up a dance to the anthem, and then the 3 winners, which will be voted on, will fly out here for Power Not Pity Day, and we'll be selling all of our merchandise. We'll have a booth where you can do your You Don't Know About Me, so you have months to practice it.
Wow.
And it will be a big, giant fundraiser for Ambition. We'll have some bands, music, like different people performing the anthem, and other music as well. So
When is this taking place?
that we're still figuring
Okay.
out. The challenge is being launched in about a month and a half.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, definitely let us know.
I
'cause
definitely will.
want to,
Yeah.
because if
The
nothing
song
else,
is
definitely
so
want
much
to go.
fun.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It'll be in Santa Monica.
Woo!
Yeah.
You know, I'm a writer, and so the importance of story is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And we even were talking about that, how, you know, looking at the different stories and what you do with your products. You have these incredible stories. However, I'm curious if you have a product that it was difficult to come up with the story, but then how did you find your way to it?
So it's so interesting because I do this 2 ways.
Mm-hmm.
I have sometimes a bag that I design based on a person.
Okay.
And and they both have their easy and their hard. And sometimes I make a bag and then I think, okay, that's that person.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go through all the details of the bag and their story. And sometimes it's so obvious why this connects. And a little off subject, but I also have had some bags. I mean, I believe in our lives, right? I call them friend shifts.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, right, you groove with certain people, and it doesn't matter if it's all good or bad or whatever it is, I think. And I love that term, friend shift.
Yeah, I like that.
So sometimes I think, oh, do I change the name of the bag?
Oh my God, I was going to ask you about that too. Okay.
For the most part, I don't,
Cool.
because whatever that was, there was beauty in that. And I don't have a very a confrontational personality, so I don't have ugly, bitter endings with things. And although maybe they are, but they just don't come out that way.
Right.
But I feel like everything, like, I don't believe that everything happens for a reason, but I believe you can put reason to everything that happens. So if I sort of move away from somebody or someone moves away from me, I like to look at it that way.
Right.
So that's why changing the name of a bag sort of dishonors the beauty that we had.
Yeah.
And like making the bag name after my mom, the Helen.
Yeah.
That was so easy to make.
Yeah.
But I do have one particular bag because this particular friend, she's very particular about what she likes. So I couldn't name a bag after her so I knew for her I have to design the bag after her. But there were many, many components that I knew I had to figure out a way to tell the story and make look like JAMAH. So that was, and then some of my stories and connections with people are so deep that you think, well, how do you lend that to a handbag?
Yeah.
But what I started realizing is, it's not really a connection of who they are and the components of the bag. I mean, sometimes that stands out.
Right.
But it's really about the beauty of the bag connected to the beauty of that person.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to match super intentionally.
Yeah, like a one-to-one.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
I don't know, does that answer?
Yeah, that helps because then it seems like, if I'm taking this correctly, that what you then do is you create the essence
Yes.
Right?
That's it.
And then that reflects the story.
Yes.
As opposed to it being literal.
That's so well said.
Yeah.
I'm going to write that down.
Cool. Well, now we got it on camera. Isn't that great?
I love it.
The video is wonderful. Cool. With your luxury brands, you have a specific clientele that you're going after. So how do you target them? And how do you know how to target them, which is interesting too.
So two things. I'll start from earlier on. I've been in Vogue and in Style and the magazines and Rob Report, and we've gotten beautiful press. And interestingly, 10, 15 years ago, that kind of press meant something very different than it does now because there were no influencers.
Right.
We had a picture of Brad Pitt on People magazine carrying one of my bags.
Cool.
It's game-changing. Back then, that's not game-changing anymore.
Yeah.
Especially for higher-end brands. But I actually got a call from the stylist, the costume designer, they did a 4-series arc on the Gilmore Girls.
Okay.
Came back 20 years later. So now all of the kids, the teenagers who watch that show, they could be possible clients. And that show was very, very, costume brands loved to be featured in the Gilmore Girls.
Wow.
So the costume designer called and she said, there's a particular bag of yours that I want Rory Gilmore to wear. She comes back as a journalist in Europe somewhere, and I want her to carry your bag. So we make the bag, and I wait for the series to come out. And it's 4, I think, 1-hour episodes. Mm-hmm. And this bag is like an appendage on Alexis Bledel, who plays Rory. And we start getting orders, and it's not an expensive bag. Mm-hmm. And I thought, wow, Vogue, modern luxury, all these amazing publications, and Rory freaking Gilmore throws that bag on her shoulder, and people want it.
Yeah.
But that's random, right? So you can. One of our rules is we don't pay for advertising; we do editorial. And I think there's a middle. When you're a really wealthy brand, you do advertising because, firstly, it's beautiful and people can see your brand everywhere.
Right. But
for me, there's no in between. There's editorial, and then, budget will mean great advertising. But now there's so many other means to advertise. But what the Motorcar collection has done is, we're thrown into these people with these high-end cars.
Yeah.
We do a lot of these car events for pleasure, which turns into business.
Yeah.
So those people are now at my fingertips. And what's happened is that word of mouth has spread like wildfire.
Yeah.
I also have a very dear friend. Her name is Christina Cheever, and she was with Rob Report, and she's now with the DuPont Registry, and she is my chief pimp. She's just an amazing person on every level as it is, but she has really helped spread the word of JAMAH.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, in fact, I have a bag named the Christina. It's named after her. If I talk about it too much, she cries. She cries a lot.
Does the bag cry?
You know what? That's actually a great idea. But it's what she has shown me was that she really she just has so much exposure to that world. It has really introduced me to the way she navigates that world. So having more Christinas, I'm not sure how her husband would feel about more Christinas, but having more people like that, and what happens, right? You get one Christina, you get more, and we all help each other's. Sort of help each other flourish on this journey. Yeah. She happens to always carry my bags. So, and she just has a way about her, and so people see the bags that way. So sometimes, right, it's just a person carrying the bag that brings the attention. But when you have people like her who are in the business, making noise for you, that's what I'm looking to do, is replicate that.
Yeah.
Because that's fun, connective, personal, and helps grow the business.
Yeah, and it does speak to, you know how that works. If she's got that, then that must be the thing to have.
That's it. Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
I like to say that my my mom was one of the ladies who lunch, and that was a big part of it. You know, if you brought something, then it was, oh man, then Lee has that. I gotta have that.
Yeah, and you know what's so interesting about that? Because this whole sort of fighting against the big brands, and people would say, you know, nobody's going to care about an unknown brand, and nobody's going to care about Made in the USA. And just in the last few years, because it sort of iterated from no one cares about Made in the USA to people say they care, but they really don't because their actions are not following that, to now people actually care. And so many brands are so saturated because of social media. Now I have clients coming in and saying, I have my whichever bags, but I want something that I don't see on every street corner.
Yeah.
And not at the expense of those bags, and that's what I always say. I don't want someone to come to me to replace the fact that they're buying all these other brands. I want to be added to that collection, and that's the goal of JAMAH, for the name to be thrown around in the breadth of Chanel and Hermes and Louis and whatever anyone's sort of fancy is.
Yeah, and that's another aspect of luxury as well that we didn't touch on, but you said it so beautifully, which is that one of a kind, it's mine.
Yeah.
Nobody else has it.
Yeah.
And that means that it's a cool thing to be able to say, well, just so you know, I know you love my bag, but yours will even be something that nobody else has because of what they do at JAMAH for you. And then to say, oh my gosh.
Yes.
So, I mean, I can say I've got a JAMAH bag, but I've got my JAMAH bag.
I love that you said that, because a long time ago I remember this gentleman said to me, like, so it's made to order. Like, what does that really mean? That means you don't have to store inventory. I said, that also means I pay 5 times as much for everything I touch. Yeah. And it also means that your bag, even if you and someone else order the exact same bag, to your point, they are made separately and with you in mind.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's really great. So with the personalization and having these made to order and all of that, which is really beautiful, how do you scale if it is very specific, if it is like that?
So if you go onto our website, even though you can make some choices, it's certain leathers, it's certain hardware. It's the second you want something special, you sort of go out of our mainstream.
Right.
So scaling our classic collection that is easy to buy online, even though it's made to order, we can follow a pretty typical scaling process with that. With the bespoke work, that's where it's completely different.
Right.
And I always say, and it might sound naive, but I promise you it's not, and I've said the same thing about ambition. One day, right, Coco Chanel in 1920 was on her knees pinning, hemming, making hats in a little atelier. And never understood, right, the magnitude of that brand. And I think many people, even when you have huge dreams, it's hard to really understand, to imagine the magnitude.
Yeah.
So I've always said, and I always use this other example, in the late 1800s, 5 women sitting around wanting to help these young kids didn't say, we're going to have the Boys and Girls Club,
right,
and this is what it's going to be. No one said, how are you going to scale it? And that's a very common question now. And what I say, and what we've been experiencing, is I'm just going to do this so damn well that scaling happens to us. And like everything else we do, as we grow and iterate, we bring people in that help us go to the next level.
Excellent.
So that's my goal, is just doing it really well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. That's cool. Huh. Yeah, I was on the website, and it's really great because you can choose the different leathers and you can choose, the different grommets or whatever, and it's very intuitive, very user-friendly. So.
And we're actually, in about 2 months, releasing a whole nother level of that. We have a lot of pieces that are waiting to be seen. Yeah.
Well, that means that we just have to come back to you.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, yes, it does. We'll just have to hang out again. I think we can do that.
That might be, yeah. And with nobody else in the room.
No, nobody else in the room. We'll go to the room.
Perfect.
For those who don't know, it's a sushi place. We love it. Okay. Is there anything else you would like to share?
Oh, gosh. I think, we just want people to follow us and see who we are and understand who we are, whether we're a place you want to purchase a bag from or not. We do have men's and women's and, of course, the Motorcar collection. So we're just trying to bring attention to what we do and the beauty behind it.
Yeah. And if people go on to your site, can they get to Ambition?
Yeah, so there's ambition.org.
Okay.
And JAMAH.com, JAMAH.com.
Great, because definitely want to send people there because they can also check out more about Ambition.
Yes, exactly.
It's wonderful. Well, Nancy, thank you so much. So we're going to do the founder deep dive. You ready? I'm going to ask you a few questions.
Okay.
What would you do if someone suddenly gave you $500,000?
I'd use it to grow ambition.
Perfect. Yeah. I can see that. What is one financial or any reality of building your business that rarely gets talked about?
I think the idea behind, I always say there's what you can afford, and you have to be fiscally responsible. There's what you can't afford, and then there's what you can't afford not to afford. So making the choice, like what it takes to make the choices to go outside your comfort zone, and to find, it's a fine dance, right? Because that can ultimately lead to being a spendthrift, which you can't do. But I think what's not really talked about is the significance when you're small and growing of every single dollar.
Yeah. That makes sense. Now, I'm assuming, did you fund your company all yourself? Was it all bootstrap?
I've had some friends and family, but it's all bootstrap.
Okay, before you did start seeking with friends and family, how did you decide to take the leap to do that?
Well, interestingly, I was looking to get funding.
Okay.
Met with this group. They were great. It was looking pretty likely. But I have to say it felt bigger than me at the time. I didn't really quite understand it. And like what it really meant to take in real money.
Right.
Then I started sharing about my dream to start Ambition and how great this is going to be. And they started asking me all these questions, like very tactical questions. How much time are you going to spend with Ambition? What are you going to be doing with Ambition? We don't want to give you money for JAMAH and then have you spend it on your time elsewhere. And I said, well, no, because the success of JAMAH is going to help support Ambition, and you should all want to do that. That's a great thing. And this was in the early 2000s. People can handle that conversation now. They couldn't then. Yeah. And so they backed out.
Yeah.
And they weren't completely in, but I watched that, and I realized nobody's going to get this. If they don't get it, these are very smart, successful people, and they sort of symbolize for me. That's if I have that from them, I'm going to get that from anyone I talk to.
Yeah.
So I need to do friends and family, because I can tell that story, and those people will want this because of that.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. What did you almost do instead of kind of taking the leap with JAMAH and all of that? Was there anything else that was on the horizon for you that you thought, I'm going to do this instead? Or
No, when I was a technical writer, when I decided to go outside of the fashion industry, and when I came back in, had this opportunity, created this opportunity in the entertainment industry doing, fashion. And no, I realized, in fact, I called some of my college friends and I said, it's so crazy, but I'm going into ultra luxury fashion. To which everybody said, well, yeah, of course you are. I wish someone told me that. That would have been really helpful. So no, I no.
Wow.
I could see doing something with my writing. In fact, and it's so funny because I used to want to write a book or host a show on relationships, but really tongue-in-cheek. And what I've realized now, the place I am in the world and all my relationships and my relationship with my husband, that all of the things I wanted to talk about, which were very edgy then, are really how I've lived my whole life. And now we're sort of talking about in the ramen series, and they become in Ambitions. We have this series of Nancyisms, and so they've all held true. But no, this space in fashion is it for me.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Okay, all right. Okay, so now we're going to do the Bisfit Minute.
Number 1, your challenges do not dictate your constitution. We can be 2 things at once. We can always hold 2 truths. Start before you feel ready, because momentum will build and reveal clarity. Do not build for everyone. Build for the people who truly value what you do. Consistency beats intensity every single time. Small actions repeated daily will build your brand. Learn to separate emotion from decision making. Not every setback is personal. Listen closely to what your customers repeat. Your next opportunity is usually hidden there. One of my favorites, simplify more, complicate less. Clear business scales faster. Relationships open doors that advertising never will. Invest in people. Resilience is a business skill. Resilience is a choice. The ability to keep moving matters more than perfection. And the final would be who you are, because authenticity creates trust, and trust creates longevity.
Oh, that's so cool. The Nancyisms. I love it. We've got Nancyisms. It's perfect. Okay, so we're going to do the rapid 5.
Okay.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
Happy.
Okay.
Am I looking at you?
You can look at me now.
Okay. Happy.
Good. Okay. And you've got a bright, you sparkle. It's very, very cool. I just thought I'd say that. Okay, well then what makes you smile? What always makes you smile?
Everything.
Everything?
Yeah, because I like to, I think it's smile first. Instead of what makes me smile, if I smile, it'll make everything better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my mom used to say that. She would do this thing, we would take pictures and she'd say, okay, Linda, think happy thoughts. And I always, when I was a little girl, I literally thought she meant that I needed to think happy thoughts. And so then I would smile and think. There are a lot of pictures that photographers would ask me to redo. Yeah. But I always had that's why, because you would say that. What do you know now that you wish you knew as a kid?
Oh, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't even begin to break that down.
Yeah.
If I just had some more information. I don't know, though. Do we wish we knew certain things as a kid, or is that the whole point?
Right.
You know, I'm changing it to that.
Yeah. It's a little bit of a trick question sometimes, at least for me personally, because I agree with you. I can only know what I know now because I've been through what I've been through.
Yeah.
So, and I couldn't have known it then.
No.
So, yeah. What is your guilty pleasure?
Smiling.
Yeah?
Yeah, like all the time, anytime. It really, it changes everything. And I promise, right, like, for the moment you smile, you cannot be sad. It just simply doesn't work.
Yeah.
So it would be that.
Cat or dog?
Dog. Oh, I mean, dog.
That's so funny. I just realized what I may have sounded like. Just a second. Do you have a dog now?
No,
Okay.
no. It just would not work right now.
No.
We both grew up with dogs, but I love other people's dogs right now.
Yeah. Nancy, thank you so much for coming. This has been a blast having you join us today, and I've really enjoyed chatting with you, and we definitely have to do a follow-up.
Oh, we must. And thank you so much. This has been so, so great.
Yes.
And if there were anyone else here, I would thank them too.
Yeah, I know. If there were just, anybody here, wouldn't that be amazing? We'll just put out thoughts as if they are. And all of you, thank you again for joining us for another episode. Links in the description below to find out more about Nancy and Ambition and JAMAH. Please check it out. You will be so happy you did. And until we see you again, have a great time.